How is it going, YouTube? Malagant here. We'll be talking about leveling. Such a surprise. If you're not familiar with my content, I usually extremely enjoy leveling in other ARPGs as well, to be honest with you. But that said, this video is going to be about like just some pointers that are making your character stronger along the path of the leveling and taking more out of your character, maybe having an easier time while leveling, maybe having a faster leveling process as well. And especially probably some of the things that I'm going to be mentioning are going to be repetitive, maybe even a lot of common sense stuff that I'll say. But I'm really hoping at the very least for the newcomers to Grim Dawn scene, and some of the things are going to be applicable for like other games as well. It's going to be useful. I really hope so. So the first thing that I'll mention is that like when you start the game, your left click is going to be a weapon attack. It is usually better to make it move to, and then you can put your weapon attack to your like right click or one of the buttons of your choosing. It's entirely up to you. The second thing that you should, in my opinion, learn about in this game, at the very least, as soon as possible, is the fact that this is something that you might actually like missed it. I mean, no matter how many hours that you have into this, there's quick bar slots key bindings over the key bindings part. So from 1 to 0, and I have like, for instance, F that I'm using, I have a G that I'm using over there, and for 6 I can actually like reach. But as you can see, like my heal and my energy potion is at 9 and 0. Like, I am not necessarily pressing 9 to use a heal pot, of course not. In fact, my health potion, there's another key binding over here. It says drink a health potion with Q and drink an energy potion with E. Now, this is really interesting because that means that to drink a health potion or an energy potion, I don't necessarily need them to be on my bars at all. So that is one thing. So they have their own key binding. For the most part, you would like the health potion to be over there, but they can damage me a little bit. We're missing like 6 HP here. If I press it, I had like 6 potions. Now I have 5 potions. I pressed Q and it uses it. Basically, you understand the point. So you can use this. I usually remove the energy potions in almost all my characters, simply because like I don't necessarily run out of energy at the very end. And I put like another booster potion over there, and I usually keep the health potion simply because like the cooldown is very important, especially when things are going wrong. We could from this jump into some sort of like a mastery class combination discussion. Which one is like better at leveling? I'm not going to be talking about that. I do believe that some of them are a little bit better than the others, definitely. But I don't necessarily want this video to be about like which one is the fastest one, but if you would like just a small input, Necromancer and Inquisitor are really self-sufficient. Soldier is really self-sufficient, and just because it is self-sufficient, that means you don't necessarily need to spend many more points on the mastery bar. So since you've spent already some points into the mastery bar, you'll be able to take a lot of different abilities that are going to be boosting you along the path, and you don't necessarily depend on a secondary mastery to get your strength back up. That is what I mean by the self-sufficiency. So therefore those are a little bit more potent at leveling. So if you're combining a class from any of those, you could actually consider leveling with one of those masteries first instead of the other one that you were about to choose. But one thing that is interesting is that every single ability that these masteries have, definitely there's an ability that is shining a lot more than the others. This is incredibly important. What I mean by that is like, if you're a soldier, if you go cadence, not necessarily the best leveling ability, but simply because like, it is going to be single target. You see, like for the most part, we are going to be AoEing, right? Like this is obviously Crucible, like I said, you see, but during the campaign as well, for the most part you will be AoE. So you would like your main ability to be heavy AoE, but on top of each other, you would like it to be at the very least good on single target as well, right? So that is the important part about it. So therefore, Force Wave would be shining a lot more on the soldier, and if you would like to, give another example on the Inquisitor, for instance, instead of the Storm box, going for the Word of Pain would be better because Word of Pain is, heavier AoE, definitely heavier AoE. To add to this, and what I'm gonna say over here is also applying for the late game as well. For late game, it's a little bit easier to mess around with this. For the early game, in my opinion, you shouldn't. And what is that is there are damage types in this game. There's some abilities that are dealing 2 damage types. There's some abilities that are only 1. For instance, the flash freeze, just cold, pure cold. At least the main ability. And there's some abilities that are dealing, main hand damage. So they're using your weapon. On top, it's adding, like, let's say maybe cold damage, maybe lightning damage, maybe elemental, or all 3. So you get 2 points, but from this, what I'll say is that, like, try to focus the main abilities damage type and choose only 1 damage type. Don't spread. At the very least, at the first, like, 60, 70 levels, try not spreading at all. If you would like to mess around at some point, I mean, be my guest. But in Grim Dawn, it is usually better to just go for single damage type or the overwhelming damage type that you can support. So definitely some things are going hand to hand a lot better than the others. How you can check this is, like, whichever master you are using, you can definitely, like, mouse over, you can see that, like, lightning and physical, lightning over there, and then over here electrocute. So in this case, lightning and electrocute is probably having a good synergy, and that is probably true for the entire game. But if you check over here, let's say we have vitality and bleed. So should I be having vitality, bleed, lightning, physical, and main hand? Probably not. So try to avoid this, simply because there are 3 really main things that you can do in this game to, like, multiply your damage. To, like, main sources to multiply your damage, especially for the late game. It is not that limited. So you have, obviously, like, the damage multipliers. If you're going lightning, lightning damage multipliers. You have the minus resistance. So if you're going lightning again, minus lightning resistance to your enemy would be good. And then, critting the enemies is really important as well, because you are hitting normal and then you crit, so that, like, your damage is multiplied. That is really important too. So those 3 things are, like, the big things that are going to be, making your character really powerful. At the very end game, there are more resources to pull this off. At the early game, while leveling, your resources are very limited. So you really don't want to split this. If you're lightning, you would like to have, you only have the resources to boost lightning. You don't necessarily have any other resources. That's all I'm trying to say. At the late game, you might find, like, a legendary item that's capable of, boosting this and that. In that case, feel free to theory craft. In the early game, try to stick to 1. That is really important, no matter what you're playing. If you're playing physical damage, try to stay physical damage. Trauma can go hand to hand, because trauma is the physical damage over time. Feel free to do that. But if you have an item that's going for, like, physical damage and trauma, fine, wear it. If you have an item that is only trauma, try to find the physical, because, like, it will be directed. You want to just, like, directly delete it as you level up. This can be applied for cold, it can be applied for Word of Pain, that is full elemental, so in that case, go full elemental damage, never mind the damage over time. And you probably do understand what I'm trying to say. So, max out the ability. Try to stay to the same damage type. And max out the modifiers. Now, from this, we're going to be basically connecting into the next point. Boost these by every single thing that you can. What I mean by that is devotions, components, these little components that you find throughout the game. You'll be able to apply them into your weapons, or, like, your gear. And then on top of that, you'll be able to get some reputation vendor, they're called augments, if I'm not mistaken, rewards that you can apply to your mostly weapon and accessory. At the very late game, you'll be able to apply some augmentations to your armor as well. They're more defensive though. So check all this basically to boost and boost it in one fashion, and during the leveling you will have such an easier time. So the next point is going to be about the mobility, and this one applies to like pretty much all the ARPGs, not only to Grim Dawn. Movement speed is obviously not only giving you, you know, the speed, but at the same time, the speed when it comes to like leveling, so it will, you know, fasten up your make your leveling process faster. But at the same time, it actually like the mobility is really something that you should have to, you know, play it safer as well. Sometimes you do want to like, you know, step away from your enemy. In Grim Dawn, the animations are incredibly on point. So what I mean by that is that an enemy will step next to you. He will swing his weapon. As this weapon is reaching your body of the character, it will actually hit. And that is incredibly on point in Grim. That is one of the cases why hardcore is really balanced. So if you, you know, pay attention to an enemy, as you come close, you don't necessarily need to move away. You do need to move away, however, as they land the hit on you. And if you did manage to move away, in fact, no matter if you started the animation or not, the ability is gonna or the animation or the attack is gonna miss completely. So therefore, the movement speed is going to be really safer to play as well. It will definitely make your character and your leveling process lots well, it will increase the potential, let's say. On top of all this, what I'm gonna mention is that this could change, but because like I'm playing from Ashes of Malmouth expansion right now, soonish, hopefully. There's going to be Forgotten Gods coming out, and in the Forgotten Gods, they're introducing these components that are like applicable to medallions, if I'm not mistaken, and they're going to be giving us mobility abilities such as like the Shadow Strike and Soldier has the Blitz, obviously, and then on top of all that, right now in the game we have something called the do I have a bank here? Let me see. The Rift Stone right over here. This Rift Stone over here is something that I used by like pretty much every single leveling video that I had, except Soldier and Nightblade, simply because like the other masteries, they didn't necessarily have any mobility at all. So the Rift Stone was giving it to you. And that's mobility ability. The Rift Stone, what it gives is literally the same thing as the Shadow Strike, and it is making the game incredibly faster. On top of all everything, obviously, you can sort of like dodge some mechanics as well, thanks to this, you know, gap close or open in some cases too. And it definitely helps smoothen the leveling processes too. But as I was saying, like in Forgotten Gods, if I'm not mistaken, they will not only touch the abilities of like Soldier and Nightblade, but they might even remove the Rift Stone. I am not really sure about that one. That's not something that I know for 100%. And maybe even the components that are going to be in the game will need to be, you know, gathered in a fashion and then crafted, and then maybe they will even require a level to begin with. So I don't necessarily know that much information, so just on this topic, just take it as like mobility is really important for your character throughout from level 1 to 200 for sure. This is something that I mentioned multiple times. There's experience potions in this game, these little things, potion of clarity. This is only, you know, achievable from getting to Revered with Malmouth resistance. So if you have a first character, if you have only, you know, one character as your first character in Grim Dawn, try to get to these as soon as possible, because it will not only help you out with the first character that you have, but also the next characters that you create. It literally gives you double the experience from everything unless you die. And on top of all that, there's a mandate as well, which is boosting the reputation gain with their corresponding factions by 150%. And these are, you know, purchasable with the character that you're playing, and then put it into the bank, and then with your next character you'll be able to use them. So therefore the reputation gain is not going to be as grindy anymore. It's kind of like rewarding you since you have done it once. Checking from my list over here if we have gone through everything, we can talk about the devotions as well, just a tiny bit. it is really important to like find every single devotion shrine. If I'm not mistaken, recently actually, there's something called the checklist over here. You could definitely like see every single devotion shrine, I should say, in the game, in Grim Tools checklist. It is really, really convenient and it's incredibly useful. You're seeing these ticks on it simply because like I loaded my save game into this. You can do the same, and or you can just check where they are and manually walk there, or you can recognize, oh, I have taken this, so you don't necessarily need to take it. But it is important to like take every single one of them so that your character is like working with so many more devotion points. It's the same logic between like maxing out an ability and taking the maximum out of it. That too. On top of all this, there's like this little trick that you can do by starting in Crucible. If you have the Crucible DLC, in fact, like I don't necessarily play Crucible except this. Like this is what I do. When I create a character, I jump into the campaign, gain a couple of levels, put a couple of levels into my AoE ability. In this case, it was Devouring Swarm, and then exit the game, come to the Crucible, and I do a couple of like 10 levels and then reset. We just reset it now, and if I start over again, I'll do like 10 more waves, reset one more time. As you can see, like it is giving you this thing called tributes, and then you can come to this guy and say, I wish to prove my devotion, and you spend 3 tributes to get a devotion point. Now we have 1 devotion point to work with. So this is a cool starting trick that you can do to get like 5 devotion points, in fact, because the first 5 is going to be costing you only 3 tributes back to back. So that means you only need to do like this process only 5 times, and that takes about like 20 minutes or something if you have the character pretty much ready with like a strong ability to begin with. That's a cool trick. With like, so you're basically starting the entire Grim Dawn with like 5 extra devotion points. So therefore, what this does is that it gives you the flexibility of like dodging some of the devotion shrines if you don't necessarily have like Vengeful Wraith or something, or Vitriolic Gallstone. You don't want to spend this, or maybe you come to the ultimate and it requires a relic. You don't necessarily want to craft that relic. It's up to you. If you want to, go ahead, of course. But if you don't want to, then you can definitely skip that. That's basically what it does. Like, not only it gives you the power at the very start of the game, but at the later on, it gives you like this flexibility to like dodge some of the devotion shrines. You don't necessarily need to like complete everything. But I'm guessing with the introduction of Forgotten Gods, since we're getting like many more devotion shrines, especially into the ultimate difficulty, this thing will go away as well. And I think it's a good thing. The last thing that I'll actually talk about, guys, is being in control of the reputation NPCs in this game. So if I log my battle mage right over here into the main campaign, and I give you some examples, let's say that we were playing the Chamois and we are playing Primal Strike to a level. That's usually how I level with the Shaman, and from the back of my head, I already know this. So you need to like go to the Keybindings. They have some good weapons for you at level 35. That's the first, basically, milestone, let's say, for the leveling. At level 35, when you're friendly with them, you can get these weapons or armor pieces, and that is always the same with every single reputation faction out there, except the expansion one. So the vanilla ones are always rewarding you for level 35 items and respected. I said friendly earlier, sorry for that. So it is respected for level 35. Keep that in mind. Once you reach level 35, think about which one you're respected with. Let's pay a visit. What are they selling? They're not necessarily expensive whatsoever. And in this case, I was saying like I'm using lightning. There you go. You have like a ridiculously strong one-handed scepter that you could use for lightning. Another trick would be maximizing the rolls of this. If you don't necessarily think that is a good roll, you could actually exit the game and log in again. The item will roll again, obviously within its cap, but you can try to like maximize the roll if you don't want that item that you're seeing. Another one that I could, you know, give an example of is that the boots from Homestead, for instance. You know how chaos resistance and aether resistance is something pretty hard to come by at the very early on of the game. Definitely is. You don't necessarily need to like find, you know, 70% either, but even 20% can be tough to find. These boots over here for level 35 are actually not too bad at all. This one right over here to the left, it says harvest footpads. They give aether, chaos, and elemental resistance and movement speed on top of each other. Pretty insane. Another thing that I can suggest is that like there's this components for beginners, Malagants. I write beginners wrong. I wrote beginners wrong. So ashamed, right? I'm sorry. Anyways, this video over here, I'm gonna link it in the description below as well. If you're new to the game, especially, check this out. This 10-minute video over here is gonna help you out big time with the components, because using the right components at the right levels, especially at the start of the game, gives you ridiculously good optimized characters, especially when it comes to the resistances. And if you're familiar with the RPGs, keeping your resistances, you know, in control or like in good shape is really important in these type of games. So is in Dawn, definitely. I think I'm going to be closing it over here. If I forgot anything, I'll actually come with like a second part or something. Really hope that you enjoyed the video. Drop a like, and I'll see you next time.